Hello, welcome to our overview of the Acolyte. Uh, we've gone through all 8 episodes already, individually, or in one case, in the opposite. In the opposite, in the starter episodes, we done two of those together because they came out together. But
Yep.
this is going to be our overview opinion of the whole series. Um, Thoughts towards that, certain parts of the series as a whole, the way we think the show is going forward, how much influence it has on either other seasons, other programming, or nothing at all. And the fun, the one at the end is basically going across other, basically other the complete mire and mess that is the fans. We'll leave that to the end, and if you want to completely avoid that, that's fine. Um, but just for a heads up, we are not people who are, you know, atypical people that you would have seen at the beginning of the uh, Twitter X messenger. You're seeing the odd idiot going through. We may be idiots, but we're not those idiots. So,
Very
and
well
we're not,
said.
yeah, yeah, um, and we're not necessarily going to be big on Disney fan lovers either. We're not going, oh, Disney are the greatest thing in the world, but we're also not going to go everything since Disney is the worst thing ever either. So we try to be fair. Anyway, that's enough. So anyway, I'm Ben. My co-host is.
Olympus, it is great to be here. I'm really looking forward to getting into this overall sort of review of the Acolyte season one. And yeah, heads up, guys, apologies for the lighting of me tonight. I have just completely rejigged the room, and I appreciate that I'm looking quite dark. So I couldn't fix it before this recording, but it will be fixed the next week or so. So yeah, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe you don't need to be bothered by my face for the next hour or so.
Fair enough. No, and just one last thing, we are going to be out on podcast at the Acolyte Review podcast. Um, and
Hmm.
we'll also be live on, or not live, but out on Trek Wars and Fantasy on YouTube. Um, so, with that being said, shall we get underway? We probably starting off with the big one first, which probably is wise to be honest. We're going to split these roughly into small categories, and basically put in the story slash plot slash writing, anything around that. So, do you want to get underway with this Olympus?
Yes. Story plot writing. Yeah, it's story and plot kind of go hand in hand. The writing's an additional tag on that we've added into this after a quick chat because there's a lot of reaction on social media to the writing side of it. So I think it's pertinent to wrap that in as well. Um, the story in summary for me, I thought was basic but effective. It's a very standard start, middle, end style story. There's not too many twists or turns in it, so it's not too ambitious. I feel like throughout the season, the writers have had a goal for what they wanted to get the story up to from a sort of main arc and side arc perspective, and they succeeded in that. It's not being ambitious on the story front, I guess, is my summary of that. So maybe not as exciting as a lot of people were hoping for, but I think it delivers in terms of telling a basic but convincing story of twins who have lost each other, find each other again through a series of different scenarios, all wrapped up in the Star Wars universe. Um, Before I move on to the writing part of it, did you have anything that you wanted to add or respond to on that, Ben?
Generally, I agree, but I don't want to be. I wouldn't necessarily always be agreeing, but I don't want to be that person who just says, "Oh, I
Mm.
agree with so and so. But yeah, without the story, they were going out through the entire arc of this, hinting at what's coming next. It was not necessarily a complete murder mystery, as in you got to work out who killed all these Jedi. This was we know who killed the Jedi. We need to find out why and work out. And then even that was answered probably halfway through, probably. And then going out, it's like, how do they get to this stage and why? And yeah, and why? This was always giving you new hints or asking questions constantly throughout each episode, going why, what,
Mhm.
and maybe even showing you or hinting at stuff. And generally, as an overview, I think it was basically this was a foundation season, a foundation story. This was to go, this is where we are. This is what the Jedi are like. This is why scenes are from the prequel trilogies happened. This is how the people, the Sith or the bad guys are, and the other groups of people, whether that's I nearly called them the Night Sisters. There was not the Night Sisters, but the
Witches, the
witches,
Coven.
Covenant, yeah, and how they fit into this, and
Mm-hmm.
the politicalness of the Jedi, um, the people who want want to live their way, uh, and how they want to necessarily hide or build themselves throughout the series. And this is basically what I think is an introduction story, a complete foundation of the building for potential to build up. And it's more about the story, not necessarily the mystery. So it's not Chris, not which path through the forest to find which exit. This is this is the path. Enjoy the journey.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, definitely. And that takes us nicely into the writing side of it because there was a lot of social media. Well, we won't go into too much on the social media reaction until later, but there was a lot of commentary around the writing of the show. People accusing it of being a little bit weak or not thought through or a little bit all over the place. Quite frankly, I thought the writing was decent. I mean, it wasn't top tier phenomenal, but it certainly wasn't bland. I think characters' sort of speech and interactions were written up very well. I genuinely never thought watching through the episodes that there was anything wrong with the dialogue or similar written into the story. There might have been one or two points that I think were maybe rushed a little bit. And I got that from maybe a piece of dialogue here or there, amongst other things like the way scenes were cut and how times changed. But generally, I was very happy with how the writing of the overall story went too.
I generally agree. There could be an improvement, maybe taking a bit longer to get to certain places, the odd word, but generally, I would uh, not have thought about that kind of thing if people didn't come up with going on about it in Twitter, so
Yeah,
or
exactly.
X. So I would not have really thought about it. Okay, maybe I'm not the most highbrow of readers or watchers of content in the world, but that doesn't make any difference.
No, exactly. It
It's
doesn't
not,
doesn't make any difference at all.
yeah.
So I guess
Uh,
on that point, characters. Do you want to give us a
if there's,
summary of characterization?
um, I would say for the most part, I think most of the characters are pretty good. Okay, like some, they're not necessarily been putting a lot of history out, but they don't necessarily have to. The main ones that I've made notes of here, and I think I have missed one out. So Master So, nothing to bid. He's probably to me he's almost been the lead or the co-lead uh, with this. the other being basically the same actor, May and Osha.
Mhm.
To be honest, to start with, yeah, I found them okay. I'm not necessarily following them maybe as much, or I find any of them as intriguing as maybe they should. But then again, we don't all gravitate towards the same people, so that doesn't make a performance any better or anything. But generally, okay, I know I might go into more details in a minute, especially when we talk with Olympus. Um, we have Khmer slash the Stranger, so they have changed his name to the Stranger. So presuming he's just using Khmer as a
Alias.
alias. Yeah, we've been just using Khmer as with throughout from episode 1 to 8, or even whatever first appearance he came in, probably episode 2. Um, uh, Here's the protagonist. Again, he's interested. He's not your cookie cutter villain necessarily, which is good. But again, he is the bad guy. He's supposed to be the bad guy, I suppose. And when I say bad guy, each person in here probably has a bad guy persona to them. Venestra. Again, I'm not. Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to necessarily like her, but again, she is playing the political person in the series, and even though a Jedi, I think I'm starting to see her point. I have more to say about her later.
Cool.
Um, she is not necessarily one of my more likable characters, but maybe that's just because she is playing the other bad guy on the other side, the bad guy on the good side.
Yes.
You have Yord. He is probably trying to be your perfect Jedi, your stereotypical Jedi. But I've started to grow to him after a while. His interactions with everybody, including Osha, was good. He became a lot more relaxed in front of Osha. Uh, but you could also see him trying to be the professional Jedi Knight as well in that. And he was like, no, I have to be schoolboy. You have
Yeah.
opinions.
No, I was going to agree with you and say trying and failing.
Yes. Jackie. I love Jackie to bits. One of the best characters. No, to be honest, she is my favourite character. The only downside I'm saying was this is the characters I tended to follow and love have died in this. And I suppose that's the thing of having a show about the Acolyte, which is basically the apprentice's apprentice, or the people you're on about the bad guys. You're gonna have, and I'm more about the good guys, people myself. Uh, Generally, okay, whether that be, yeah, I am more about the good guys, even if it's a bad guy who is the good guy. But these are generally the bad guys. Um, and I'll probably will get more into that later. Then I'm going to say 3 of them: Torbin, Indara, Konaka. Didn't see enough of them, but love. Uh, I would have loved to see a bit more, but they're not supposed to have been seen a lot more, which is probably done their job. And generally, I would say they are mostly well played. I would have. Indara, I'm not 100% sure about her end scene. Not quite her end scene, but the 7th episode and the choice with that did seem a bit weird when they were just basically covering it up. I'm going, but again, they are trying to cover up stuff, which is why I think which we'll mention later, I'm sure, why we didn't see. They don't know a huge amount when they get to the prequels. There are probably 2 incidents which we'll mention later, but that's half the reason why we wasn't really mentioned.
Yeah.
And the only other two people I've mentioned is Coral and Azasea, which actually I kind of like them, but they did their jobs as cultists, I suppose. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with everything you've gone through, and Indara, I wish we'd seen a lot more of. In particular, my favourite was also Jackie, followed very closely by Sol. Um, Jackie, Jackie, I wish hadn't died, but I understand why they did it, and I can see how well the story worked because of it. And I hope we get to see more stories involving Jackie and Yord. I'd like to see more of Yord as well, but definitely Jackie. If we can get some prequels to them to flesh out their starting stories or their origins.
do you think there's more to their story to give, really?
I would hope so with Jackie. Yord, I think, would be probably a little bit bland, dare I
Yeah,
say.
I think it's yeah. Whereas Jackie is still reasonably young, so I'm guessing she's about between 16 and 18 on
Exactly.
their scale, so she's really only a
And
kid life behind her,
and
in
she
my opinion.
seems, yeah, she seems quite feisty. She seems like she challenges a lot. Um, so a very interesting character that I think would have stirred things up a little bit as she was going through her initial training. So I'd like to see some maybe Tales of the Jedi kind of stuff, but
Yeah,
see how Jackie starts off. That'd be lovely. Um, and Sol, I said in our previous episode, he shouldn't have died. I think that was a waste. Again, I can see why they went that route, but this time they didn't have to. I think doing it a different way could have played out, but they didn't. They did what they did, and I accept they did what they did. And overall, does not take away from my overall enjoyment of the show. Again, I want to see more of Sol, but the benefit that comes of his death isn't as profound as the benefit that came off of Jackie's.
no, yeah, no, fair enough.
Yeah, and to elaborate on that a little bit, Jackie's death really brought to life just how much of a bad guy the stranger is. Whereas Sol's death was a blatant murder through emotional rage in the moment. And
Yeah,
like I would have preferred things to have been outed and him to face trial and all that stuff. The way they did it, I can see why, because it's allowed them to cover it up and continue the facade
yeah.
of the Jedi, so to speak.
So, could we have gone any other way with keeping, let's say, Master Soul alive, uh, doing this, and had the story so we wouldn't not necessarily have as many as little people saying plot holes here, a lot of that, um, but with the opposite. But on a serious note, going, this is not. There's a chance of people should know about this by the time we get to the prequels.
Well, I believe he'd have followed through with whatever Vanestra told him to. So yes, I think we could have. Maybe I'm wrong though with that assumption. We'll never know,
Yeah.
will we?
No, we'll never go because uh, I think he would have almost given in and gone. I need to redeem myself in this in some way or the other.
I think
Uh,
Vanestra would have convinced him the same way Indara did.
Fair enough. And yes, but how would he get along with O'Shea and how he, or maybe he still have the rivalry still there going. I hate you so much. So
Yeah, still have her leave with the stranger and take up that mantle and all that stuff. That could all still happen. That's what I'm saying. That could still happen. Saul could have lived. They'd had a way around it that wouldn't have weakened the story. But yeah, that's the only other comment I guess I've got on that. Aside from lovely cameo at the very end
yes, which
from Yoda's ears.
well, let's say two things two other appearances, Plagueis and Yoda, in the last episode. Do you? I'm going to go Plagueis first. Do we have any thoughts with that? That's either lore or the way the future leads with that.
I'll comment on character and I'll keep lore as a leading point into our next topic.
Okay.
And I don't have much to say on Plagius from a lore point, but apart from an opinion. Plagius is a character designed brilliantly. As soon as I saw him in the shadows, I knew who he was. So well done to the team who designed him. In terms of impact on the story, utterly pointless. All it's done is tell the viewers who's behind the stranger. It's not told any of the other characters. It's not told Osha. It's not told May. It's not told the Jedi. It's not revealed itself in any fathomable or important way whatsoever. And the fact that they never find out in season 1 who is basically pulling Khmer's strings, it is a big omission. Even the fact that they haven't acknowledged that being missed, which you could argue is actually a story point I've just made rather than a character, but yeah.
I think it's a brilliant thing that it's just like, this person's here. This is a plot point for later. The seed to like move over to them.
I do hope so.
Future.
I do hope so, because if it does go that way, it is a brilliant plot point. And if there is one thing that I can say positively it does do, it, for anyone who's familiar with the original Universal stories, it really sets the bar high in terms of understanding just how serious the situation is, because Plagueis is a very powerful, very intelligent individual that is not to be reckoned with. I mean, they call him Darth Plagueis the Wise. You wouldn't expect a Dark Lord of the Sith to be described as wise, but he focused so much. I'm getting into lore now. So much of his time into study, into research. He's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
No, definitely, and it's nice to bring some of these characters back in, and it gives new, and it's getting us onto through TV and film into these new areas of characters and areas and what things are like and what their environment is like. And generally, I think that is done reasonably well. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be necessarily wandering around every town and city yet, but this leads to that, and it helps with that it starts slowly building that world for that big empty thousand years and of the Jedi, or even longer than that. It's building it up to that, which is what I like. This is adding to a new generation. Okay, this is a prequel, but it's far enough back that you can sort of do near as damn it what you want, but you do have to make sure that you don't ruin everything ahead of you, which does make it a bit harder. But I don't think they've ruined anything myself.
I'll back you up there right away, because we will get into this point a little while later, but I don't think they've ruined anything either. And the whole point around Plagueis, which I'll stop. Are you finished with characters? Do you want to move on to lore?
I'm going to say yes, because whatever we can bring in with Yoda, we can bring in lore.
Perfect. So, one thing that's come up quite repeatedly through a social media reaction when it came to light a bit more prevalently is the whole retconning Anakin Skywalker thing. Yeah, exactly that reaction, Ben. Exactly that reaction. That's exactly how I feel too. And I'm going to wrap this
I
nicely.
have lots of opinions in that. None of them good. I
Yeah,
like that.
exactly, exactly. Um, Plagueis is his primary drive, at the very least towards the end of his life, is probably longer than that. Anyone who is very familiar with Plagueis' law, please comment below on YouTube and listen. But he's got a massive drive towards understanding how to use the Force and influence the midichlorians to create life. Which right away, as soon as you see him in episode 8, explains why he's there and driving the stranger down this path towards Mayanosha, because he knows somehow already that those twins were created through a divergence in the Force, i.e., the Force probably influenced midichlorians to create life. Exactly what he's trying to learn to do himself, so he can extend life and basically delay death.
Yeah, did he just do it like that? No, he probably found out bits from here, bits from there. People have probably been experimenting for a while. There's probably old law going back to maybe pass through motherhood to motherhood by witches, or I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You even have, this is not official law as far as I'm aware, anywhere in this, but Valkorian / the Emperor from
Yep.
the Old Republic. Uh, that could be something similar to what he's done to help make his life longer. And maybe there is a way through there somehow that they could create life as well. I don't know. They can create new life or more life, longer life. He says there's not stuff out there.
Exactly. We're not to say this is a wide galaxy that we know very little about. And I've forgotten what I was going to say next, but to round off, that explains the drive that Plagueis is after. Loads of questions still outstanding. Did Plagueis, I keep saying Plagueis, I'm not too sure which is, did Plagueis create the twins? Did he utilize that versions and create them himself? So he's following their life to understand and see how they live, what is their impact. Is
Maybe
he
works like the
studying
twins.
them from afar because he knows how they were created and needs to understand how that was done himself, and he can't learn that from the witches because they're gone.
Yeah, maybe he helped worked with the witches to create them. Maybe.
Exactly. It's another reason why the witches wouldn't want the Jedi anywhere near them. Imagine if the Jedi realised that a Dark Lord of the Sith helped the witches create life. Red
Yeah.
alert.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Um, yeah, so that I guess was my point around Plagueis and Force, using the Force to create life. Yes, Anakin was apparently created that way, but there's no actual evidence that that did happen one way or another. Whereas you seem to have a bit of evidence here that it did with these twins. So I will say that, just to be really devil's advocate and a bit disruptive. Other lore points, still linked to Plagueis. You've got the rule of two. The whole theme of Chimera or the stranger wanting a student or an acolyte. That's ran through these episodes, links directly to the rule of two and the power of two, which is also referenced or paraphrased by the
Yeah.
Coven. You've got the fact that
Need.
Plagueis is
Yeah.
also pulling the strings of Chimera, so you've got that power of two relationship as well. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah. So there's been this thing going on for a long while. The power, not the power of two, the rule of two, for a long while. That's been going through. I'm sure everybody at one stage thinks that they're going to break free and they're going to be the person who stays alive, or at least for the most part, on their go. But I think maybe you could get to a point, maybe where you think you could live forever. You could, that this rule for two is not you. Maybe you want to bring back the Sith and have hundreds of them hanging around, or millions, so just like the Jedi. and it's like, yeah, this is time to end, and this is trying to make it come to an end. Who says that's not the case? At one point,
You could also argue that the rule of two was broken once once Chief Palpatine executed Order 66 and created the Empire, because you've got Vader leading the I've just forgotten their names. That's terrible of me. The Inquisitors. Yeah, he's leading the Inquisitorials. Thank you, Ben. Which are a bunch of force sensitive, lightsaber wielding people. Are they training directly from him? I don't know. I've not read enough into it, and I've certainly not seen that.
And what's the official rules for Rule of Two? Is it just two evil people, evil force users, and that's it? You can't have any others at all, or is it two people who are officially Sith? The rest of them are just Inquisitors or witches?
The latter is certainly supported by the original trilogy, or I'm saying the original trilogy era. I mean,
yeah. But also another thought on that.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these things do come from real life and influences, and I know the Roman Empire is always an influence for everything.
Oh yes. They built the roads.
Yeah.
What did the Romans ever do for us? Well, they built the roads.
Oh, and the aqueducts.
Oh, and the schools. Don't forget schools.
And yeah.
Sorry, a little bit of a Life of Brian in
there. And they made the Star Wars as well.
They did.
So anyway, no. Is before the emperors even came to power, or even before Julius Caesar even came to power, you had people trying to be the one who bucks the trend and is the person going to be the one person in power instead of the Senate or the two people, whether that's Mother Marius and Sulla. I combine the names there. Or the Gracchi, I think it's the Gracchi brothers, when they were nearly getting through too big from their boots. It's like, yeah, you could have somebody before Palpatine trying to be the Palpatine or the person who created the new Sith Empire, and failing for one reason or the other, or giving influence to the person before that, or giving influence to Palpatine. So he's learned from everybody else, and basically the Senate is gradually crumbling through the cult of personality of people through the years, and being the cult of personality that was Darth Sidious eventually.
Indeed. No, agreed with all of that. Aware of time, so I'm going to skip through the next couple. So cortosis was an important one that I wanted to flag up on the lore front. It's been mentioned in previous media. This is the first time it's seen in live action, and it was beautifully introduced through the armor and the helmet of the stranger. Yeah, it's a very, very rough, molded piece of equipment. It's not like that nice, smooth, pristine look of Beskar that you get from the Mandalorians. It's a very rough mineral that's hammered together and sort of stapled in the design that the stranger has of those pieces, like the arm guard he's got, the helmet that you see all the cracks riddled through it. There's a piece, I'm sure, which you can actually see a sort of brass type melted piece of metal holding it all together. It's very rough, it's very crude, and it's very, very effective. And it looks like he has taken this raw from a mountain and molded it himself, which is exactly what he's done. But yeah, love the fact that they brought that into live action at last.
One opinion, great, love it.
Yes. Not too many. I'm going to note them, but I don't have anything to say because I am not familiar with the lore of the High Republic beyond this show. So you've got the great hyperspace disaster that's mentioned, which which is what highlights the fact that there's this versions of the Force on this planet in the first place that apparently created the twins.
Got to watch that, read that. I've definitely got to read that book that I found out that's from.
I've got to read all of them. There's loads of books for the High Republic. I didn't realize until I was watching the Acolyte. There's so many of them, and I'm a big reader, so I'll be looking to get them. The lightsaber whip. Oh, I love that. And that's it. I love it because it's so different. It's something new. It's something very unique. And it's a very brave thing for them to bring into again this live action show. Where I felt like they weren't very brave with a lot of elements of this show, they were brave with that. I know it's been seen in the expanded universe, it's been seen in the novels and the other media for the High Republic, but first time in live action, and it was lovely, even if we only saw it for a split second.
Yeah, and I know Vanessa has been out with that weapon before.
Yeah.
I've got to find out more. Unfortunately, that's my weak spot as well, as the High Republic era. Again, I've got to find out more, and I haven't got much to comment on how she got from there to there and comparing notes. I wish I could, but I'm not. Carry on.
And the last thing I've got is the lightsaber bleeding. So bleeding lightsaber crystal in the last episode again. First time in live action. I was so hyped when I watched it whilst playing, spoiler alert, Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It was a beautiful scene. You don't see it coming. And again, it's the first time playing that game. It's the first time I'd ever seen a lightsaber being bled. So to see that in live action was beautiful.
And getting on to some of the bits for later on, I won't. This is more of a. There is a difference between this situation and the way Anakin went to the dark side. The lightsaber was smashed. It wasn't in the when Anakin turned.
Yeah.
That's good enough for me. That actually is a better excuse than something that could have come up. That is very good for me. I like it. And I'm going to say with Yoda, I'm going to say one more thing along the door is Yoda and Monday. Why do you reckon for these were not mentioned, especially certain person who kept going, oh, this is the first time for 1,000 years that the Sith have appeared, or even the comments of from Yoda saying, there's always two, no more, no less. And why these things are not brought up then.
In terms of Ki-Adi-Mundi, high chances he doesn't know how this all rounded off and ended, so he isn't fully aware that it is a dark side Force user or anything like that.
Agreed.
In terms of
Fallen Jedi, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. In terms of Yoda, naughty little green alien.
And does he? The thing is, a lot of people, including you, I think, are presuming that this all got told to Yoda.
He might not know. He might have gotten a weird version of it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, we're in a position at the moment where we're in limbo. We don't know exactly what was said. And considering what Vanessa has been doing so far, she could easily manipulate this to go, this is what happened, and it's her own story. But even so, I think a lot of people would disagree from the Twitter community, but not all, that this could be an interesting story to see how that maybe Yoda might be not telling the truth or giving it from a certain point of view, or
I love that quote.
It'd be interesting to see how that goes, and how I trust the writers to go put an interesting story in there to maybe embed a rule. Sorry.
Yeah, I'll put a prediction out, right? The prediction is she was going to speak to Yoda about her former apprentice, Kimir. So it's going to bring him up. In fact, he's still alive. They've got a potential problem. But everything else, she'll have spun Yoda the same lies as she has to everyone else. So as far as Yoda's concerned...
It's a former apprentice, former Jedi.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's probably going to be the case. That there's like, this person is. I need to go out like an inquisitor and
Yeah.
hunt this down with this person who was the murderer,
Per soul. That's all
or
I'm going to
helped was the
say.
murderer. Pardon?
Per soul. He's
Yeah,
taking the rap
also,
for a lot.
yeah,
He didn't deserve that.
no, he did not. And to me, that makes for me goes. This is not ruin. This is not ruin anything. This is tied up in a bow that you go that doesn't break. In my opinion, that's you can put a thread in there to go. This is way to manipulate things, or why certain people, why certain people are the way they are and opinions, and why they haven't given over certain information because they may not know.
Exactly.
So, and
Exactly.
yeah,
So, if we're done on lore, let's move into costume. My comments on this will be very short and very succinct. Loved the costume design throughout the show. Loved, the strangers' outfits. I loved Osha's outfits. I loved May's outfit at the start. The whole assassin with the face mask bit up, and everything was so nice and sleek. But you see through the costume design as well, Osha's transformation through the show, and also May's in reverse. And yet the Jedi outfits were phenomenal, and they changed depending on what they were doing and where they were going. Utterly phenomenal job that the costume team did. And yeah, I loved it every time. I think the first couple of episodes, my comments were like at the beginning of each scene is, look at the pretty costumes, look at the pretty outfits. I love the pretty outfits. But generally, they are really pretty, and I loved how they portrayed the era of Star Wars that we were seeing.
yeah, no, I generally agree with you. I don't have much to add, but yeah, do like the outfits, especially the Jedi's uniform / outfits. So can't go wrong with that. You
Exactly.
you don't have your outfit uh, things. I'm not. What was the best word for it? Firework that you get here from some of the prequels ones with Princess Amidala or Senator Amidala,
Very true.
but still, love the outfits. Well done. Um, um, I'm in that case go to special effects, and I'm adding a bit to this, and makeup, in my opinion, as
Oh
well, and
yeah.
choreography as well, in my opinion. I
Oh,
want to add this to this.
I'm so glad you added them. I can't believe I forgot about choreography. On you go, mate.
Okay, for me, the fights were really out there. Are they better than Jules Across the Stars? Or Jules Across the Stars? That's our thing. Jules,
Jewel of the Fates.
Jewel of the Fates, thank you. We'll tell you about that at the end of the this. Why I muddled that up. But they were aiming to get better than that. They think they got better than that, which is it's their baby. Of course, they think they have. Do I think it's better? Good question. I haven't decided yet, but it's challenging. And to say it's challenging, in my opinion, that means even if it fails, it's blooming good. For me, it's the combination of styles that you had from, especially the starting 2 episodes, Lost / Found and Revenge / Justice, where you had a very much Japanese, Chinese, Eastern martial art film type fight scenes, and using the force with that, so like the push and shove, to some of that being used with the jumping effects from Eastern cinema to the more Western style fight you tended to get towards the latter part of the episodes. For me, it's how that all worked together and how they put those fights together. It for me, it was beautiful. And that adds a new thing to the fights, to Star Wars when it comes to the fights. The first trilogy, it was very boring or not far off, very basic when it came to Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. That got better when it came to Luke and Vader. Then when the prequels happened, that really got into cinematic fights, into a big, that upped it a lot. Was it better? Yeah, probably. And then this is just for me. This is the highlight for me, was some of the fight scenes. If it didn't happen very often, but for me it was a lot of. Before we go into anything else, go on.
No. Sorry, I was just going to say, to add into all of that, the way it works into my head canon is that the High Republic, height of the Jedi's power, so they are at their highest strength. They are training all the time. They've got a structure of teachers and students passing on knowledge constantly. So they are fit, fighting ready, and very, very, very well trained. That you see very, very similarly in the prequel trilogy, because they've not weakened at that point. So that's why I think you've got that very similar fighting style, although the prequels are missing some of the martial arty stuff that they introduced in the Acolyte, which I absolutely love. When you get into the original trilogy, I understand that I understand the reasons why it's so much more basic. It's a different time
Yeah.
between Alec Guinness and Vader. Alec was already getting on in age a bit. He did not have the the skill. I mean, I believe his skills were in sort of fencing style fighting, rather than the more swishy sword fighting. And his age slowed him down. That's why it improved a little bit in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. And then the sequel timeline, you've got a bunch of Jedi who, aside from Ahsoka, were trained outside of the Jedi Temple after Order 66. No structure, basically. They're part self-taught, part picking stuff up from other people. So again, the lightsaber fights are better, and the combat's better than the original trilogy, but not by much. And I believe they've done that on purpose for that very reason. That's how my headcanon fits all of that very nicely into place.
I can't complain with that at all, and I like that idea. And yeah, and you may even have different styles depending on exactly who taught you.
Yeah.
And we found out one thing in these was there was Jedi temples all scattered around. So you may have had little communities that done further training, and maybe even not everybody was trained on Coruscant. Possibly that would be interesting to see that there,
Indeed.
if there was little training for other people in other areas.
What I wanted to see in the Acolyte, it's a shame that they never did it, but they were focusing too much on their own story, which I totally understand. Hu Yang. Hu Yang was there back then.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see in the background a droid that shape.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly that.
Now,
Anyway.
we'll get onto special effects, but we may want to bring that into it as well. The amount of aliens in this and the way they looked, whether it was Jackie, Yor's apprentice, even Venestra, just the whole shebang when it came to aliens and seeing them around and the outfits, even having a certain Wookiee Gunaka there and having him with slightly shaved barts. Like his hair is, or he's all hair, it's a Wookiee, but the head hair or the body hair, it looked thinner in one stage. So I just say that's another sport that's really done for me.
Oh yeah, it was phenomenal. The quality of it was second to none. The makeup and the special effects mix that they used for the different aliens we saw in the show was phenomenal. And outside of that, the CGI equally phenomenal. Whether it was in space with the hyperspace graphics, or going through the asteroid rings of that planet before they crash, to the lightsabers and the way they're cutting through metal and walls. Um, the smoky disapparition of the witches sometimes, that was really, really well done and really cool too. The list goes on.
I know one thing I saw at one point was people going about where did this massive budget on went. I cannot
CGI.
remember. Yeah, that, and especially later on in the last couple of episodes, it was just like all I can see was like that planet ring and other things are
Oh
going.
yeah.
That's where it's in, and that and a couple of those sets are probably going to be not cheap, and
Mhm.
inflation as well. And I go at the start, I was going maybe they have a point, but then again, I'm a semi-old man by now, middle-aged man now. Oh God, that's scary. Um, um,
I'm
uh,
not far behind you, mate.
going, yeah, you've got to spend do a lot with that. You still can, but not as much as I actually think. Back in the day when I could get a pint for a tuppence, no, for probably 150 or £2 or something like that easily. But no, the effects around that planet that made my day. Uh, I said that in episode 8 review.
Hmm.
Um, the whatever it costs for some of the effects for rigging for them for that where the witches were, that's got to take a little bit to adapt and spend the money. But generally, can't can't complain with the special effects at all.
Can't complain. I think they were absolutely stellar. And I guess that takes us to overall rating. Unless you've got anything else you want to talk about before we do this, I'd like to just share my rating for each of the categories we've gone through before giving you a sort of overall.
Go ahead.
Okay, so story plot rating, I've put down 7 out of 10. I think it was strong, but could have been stronger, could have been more ambitious, but definitely on the strong side of the scale. Characters, again, 7 out of 10. Similar scenario. There were some brilliant characters. There were some ever so slightly flat characters, but generally, I think it went very well. Lore, 8 out of 10. They've explored elements from the past and the future, and they've brought stuff from the EU into what we would call now lore, canon lore, I should say. So very happy with that. Costume 10 out of 10. Special effects 10 out of 10. So overall, I'm giving the show an 8 out of 10 for me.
No, fair enough. I generally agree with you. I would put probably costumes down a lot further, either a 6 or a 7, even though they were great. Some of them I was looking at going, not necessarily they were bad, but they were. Some of them did look like rags, but then again, some of the people they may be living in that kind of environment.
That's
So
the question you've got to ask. Were they meant to look like that or not?
yes, yes, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, but one day I wouldn't mind seeing somebody looking like they were on Earth in the last century and a half. But
Yeah.
maybe that's me. But I yeah, I would say it's a 7 for me. This could go either way on a future rating, depending on what happens next
Mm.
with the future of the Acolyte. So now, depending uh, actually, do you have anything to say for overview before we go on to the future?
No, literally, I'm ready to look at where do we see this going next.
Generate this, I believe, especially from the ending, that this was definitely leading into another episode. This was an episode, another series. They looks like they was very deliberately done that way. It wasn't quite a end of part one to be continued. This was we are literally setting up it for another series. But if this ends, it's it still has an ending. But I think it wouldn't be so good if we don't have a next one. Unfortunately, we're going to nearly get into that point, but I have a feeling they're not going to do another Acolyte, um, literally because of the pure hate there has been from a lot of people on, let's say, Twitter, for example. There are other places where they've probably given off heat, YouTube and stuff, but because and that could be the ratings on IMDb, just a lot of bombing. Okay, some people say it's not quite as bad as bombing as they say, and that can be positive as well. Bombing. Unfortunately, I think it was done to death on that as well.
Oh
But
yeah, it was. It's an absolute travesty what I've been seeing in terms of reactions online, and it's a lot of people who haven't even bothered to watch the show and are just hating on it for the sake of it, which is terrible. Now, yes, the social media pressure is a big part of it, but what it will ultimately come down to for Disney and Lucasfilm is money.
yeah,
Despite all that feedback online, despite all that hate, how much money did it make? If it
yes,
made them above expectations, they'll make a
they're
season
all
two,
yes, great.
or they'll make a different series that continues that story onward, so you still see and develop the story of the stranger, Osha, etc., but through a
Yeah,
different a different title possibly.
I think
um
that might be more the way of things than that. I would love personally. I would love to see a episode, second series, uh, and even a third to help bring out more of this universe and continue the story and see what it is. Personally, I don't necessarily want a long story, and personally, I hope there's more, let's say, likable characters. When I say likable characters are not necessarily killed off. Both Kamir slash a stranger and May and Osha and Vanessa, yeah, for me they are still good characters, but they're not. I don't necessarily like them enough to go. I want to continue following that story. Um, some of you may have worked out. I also like Star Trek, and one of my favourite series is Deep Space Nine. And you have a couple of really nasty bits of work in there. Whether that's Kai Wynn or Go to Cut, or even the changeling, female changeling, or Wayoon. But for me, those characters, if there was just them being evil, I wouldn't like it. It's the other side, the other characters that I like. Uh, okay, a lot of them are good. Some of them are maybe not quite as good and done some bad things, but they are, for me, those are more favourable characters. Um, yeah, I want more of the souls and yours and Jackie's, but I don't think I'm not necessarily going to get that, which means I might not necessarily enjoy it as much. Okay, there to me, there is a way for a dock side program, a acolyte program out there, but for me, I do generally like the uh, good side to it.
Another reason why I don't think it would work continuing it under the Acolyte is because the story that they were telling, the messaging, the theming that they were putting forward has kind of come to fruition already. You start the series thinking the Acolyte is May. You realise by the end of it, the Acolyte is Osha, and it's been Osha all along. You've got that parallel. You've got the theming of master and student the whole way through that's come to fruition too. I don't see how they are going to be able to continue it under the banner of the Acolyte and keep that message as strong as they made it in season one.
And I agree. I agree that yeah, that sums it up perfectly. And the thing is, with this, they are hiding. The idea behind it is there are bad people on the other side, um, and that's half the reason we've mentioned this several times, or at least I have. Is that's half the reason the Jedi fell and the Republic fell. But for me, there's got to be. I got to like to follow the not necessarily the light side, but I would like to have a character that I can get behind. Um,
Yeah, you're right, and you didn't really have one in this series in this season when you think about it. Even the good guys, even Sol, it was made very clear very early on that he had a sinister part to play in something that happened in the past. And yeah, it left you with a series with plenty of antagonists and no protagonist.
yeah, and okay, I could have got behind him being uh, a protagonist. I could have, if he had stayed alive and fought against it. Uh, I've not say fought against it, but fought against the dark side and helped. Oh, not necessarily from maybe some of his darker urges and stuff like that. He could have left the order, and I would have been game for that. At one point, it looked like Jackie and Osha were getting along well, or they were getting on. If those are stayed alive, I could have probably, yeah, I could have got behind them, and that being a not necessarily a love interest, but a friendship thing, possibly,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, exactly.
and helping bring bring Osha or May into it. Uh, but at the moment, you could find out was May and Osha. They could still get me around Kamea Stranger, maybe, but he's not. For me, he is the villain, the not likable character. Who
Indeed.
knows? Who knows? Not me. It's an interesting one to go. Where is this going to be going?
Hopefully we find out. Hey, SDCC, San Diego Comic Con is happening in the next few days. Um, in fact, by the time you guys are watching this, it might have already happened. Who knows what
Yeah,
we might what might hear through that.
I think it'd be more the skeleton crew, but who knows?
Well, the Skeleton Crew will definitely have an announcement, but you never know. There could be something else. It could be a hint, just a tiniest little hint of something would be enough.
Well,
And on that note, is there anything else that you would like to talk about, Ben? We've got social media reaction, which I know we've been dipping in and out of. Do we
yeah.
want to jump down that rabbit hole now?
To be honest, I've got it out of half out of me now, but let's see where this goes. The hatred and horrible comments. Some people are just saying it just to be nasty. Some of these are people not necessarily. No, I'm not going to say not knowing what they are. They're getting the go, trying to get a reaction. But whether it's like, yeah, that's gay, that's rubbish. That there's not even that's rubbish. Um, Basically, I've got this quote here: "Are you a boy or are you just mentally lacking?" Was mentioned towards me when it's like, what did you think of the episode? I was on YouTube. Somebody put it up as one of their community posts. I know that's generally internet behavior, but things like that's probably one of the more extreme ones. But generally out there is I don't have any reason to go that's prevalent. But
Hmm.
I was one of the first and went, oh, I loved it, really enjoyed this. Was early on before I went too much into the Twitter bandwagon. Uh, and it's some things, okay, because I'm doing this, I'm looking more into it, into some of the Twitter comments and YouTube things. But God, it's gone downhill since, as in it doesn't seem to be more prevalent on my feed. But that's not me sounding like an old man. That's not the way to behave. That's not okay. If you don't like it, fine. If you want to be a constructive criticism, fine. I'd go be out there, put it out there.
Yeah.
That's
Do not
fine.
sow hatred. Do not take personal attacks on people. Do not do anything like
Yeah.
that. It's utterly disgusting. Utterly disgusting behaviour.
Yeah, and it's made me passionately go, this is fake, and it probably has affected my viewing of it, to be honest, even if it's thing. Will I go less on Twitter? Maybe, but I do like interacting with certainly people, and because of what we do, I like to see other people's opinions and thoughts. And it's not necessarily the first time this has happened to me with stuff I watch, whatever it be The Last Jedi, Force Awakens, or even my Star Trek fandom. It's with the new shows, but for me, it's yeah. Sorry, go on, Olympus.
No, don't. It's fine. You're absolutely right. And you and I are very, very positive people, you know, and we're very constructive with what we say, whether that is positive or something a little bit more negative. And I like to think, as we've gone through these episodes, as we've gone through Duels Across the Stars, it's very prevalent just how positive and constructive we are. We love to take the joy in from these shows. We love to experience the universe as it's portrayed to us. We might not always agree with how it's portrayed, but that's by the by. You've got no control over that. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. And I mean, you know, as constructive as we are, look at our previous episode on the Acolyte reviews, right? I must have spent about 10 minutes having a good old rant because I was frustrated at how they wrapped up the season. And that's fine. I'm allowed to be frustrated, but I was relatively constructive with that, you
Yeah,
know? And that's fine to share because we're not always happy
no,
with what's put forward. But you know what? I can look at that as one part of the bigger picture. And when I look at the bigger picture, as I say, it goes through everything we've talked about through this episode. To summarize, I'm absolutely appalled and disgusted by so many comments and reactions that I have seen on social media. I'm even more disgusted at at people that are posting things directly and personally, like they did on that comment
yeah.
on your community thread.
Oh no, it wasn't my community
Oh, thank
thread.
heavens!
It was
I
somebody
thought it
else's.
was you. I
Actually,
thought you said it was
oh,
yours.
if
I
it
was
was
like, I
my
missed
community,
that
if it
one.
was my no, if it was my oh god, these will get some interaction. But no, this was somebody else's community thread, and it was just like
Still though,
yes,
it's just utterly disgusting. I've got no other
yeah,
word for it.
yeah. I know you're a big lover of the prequels.
Oh yeah.
Me, not quite as much, but I can see the positive side, and I don't. Yeah, and
That's
I
Revenge of the
yeah,
Sith right there.
and I definitely, even in a joking way, I don't tend to bash. I don't bash Olympus about it. We all have our favourite bits. There are positives in each thing. Okay, you don't always have to go to the positives, and I know some of the programs I have not watched because I cannot necessarily get into them as well as I do.
Clone Wars. Bad Batch.
Okay, Bad Batch I'll give a go, but I know some of them trying to get into the Clone Wars is difficult for me, and I've tried. Not strangely, but I
It
haven't been
takes
persistent.
it takes a season and a half. Get through the first couple of seasons and you will not regret it.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to know it for the lore and stuff, and there's some
Hmm.
more stuff in there I want to know, and we are getting on a tangent
We are sorry.
now. So can I just say, is there any other business? Do you want to see a second season?
I do. I do. Whether it's called The Acolyte or it's something else, I want to see this story continued. So yes, the main arc for the Acolyte's concluded. You know, in terms of the main storyline that we went through, but the arc beneath that is very, very much in its infancy. And as you said earlier on, this has provided basically the scaffolding for what could be a phenomenal series of another maybe 2 or 3, let's call them seasons for now. I really want to see it continued. Otherwise, it really does bring down the quality of what they've given overall, because it'll leave people wanting in a way, not as drastically, but in a similar way to what the finale to Lost left us wanting.
But let's say, keep it on a Star Wars theme, Solo, but to a greater degree. The ending of Solo with a certain person appearing.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Definitely. That's a good example.
You're going, what happened to that? But I would like, the continuation of that.
What happened to that? Watch the Clone Wars. Watch Rebels. I'll tell you what happened to that.
But live action wise,
you're absolutely right.
They found a different way to do it.
Well, I'm not sure about timelines, but when I saw that in Solo, I hadn't watched any of the animated series at that point. So that was my first time seeing it, and I was like, oh, what's he doing there? He's meant to be dead. And then nothing came of it.
Yeah, and same for me. It's the first time I found out roughly how we came back. And then, it'd be, something should have happened to it. But generally, positive. I want a season 2 again myself. Or at least further indication of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully on this podcast, part of it, and the YouTube Trek Wars and Fantasy, or maybe somewhere else, but definitely the podcast first of it, and it's definitely Trek Wars and Fantasy. Hopefully we can go into that later when things come up.
Yeah, absolutely.
As for continuation of the Acolyte Review podcast, we have not made any discussions of what to do next, but if season 2 comes up, we will probably do something. But whether we will put more content in there, we've got to have that discussion, and we'll keep you updated. But if you do want more content, find us on Jaws Across the Stars via podcast, also on Apple and Spotify, and on YouTube at Trek Wars and Fantasy, where you'll find stuff. Olympus, do you have anything to continue with that?
Nothing. No, you've covered that off brilliantly, as always. So I've got nothing else aside from my usual thank yous and goodbyes.
Thank you, and may the force be with you.
May the force be with you.